Okay, today we're going to learn how to label triangles. Now, this is a really important part of trigonometry. So there's no maths in this part of the lesson. There's no solving anything. All we're going to learn how to do is to label triangles and how to use those three special trigonometry buttons on the calculator, sine, cos and tan. So start by drawing these 6 triangles, please. You can start drawing them now. As you'll notice, sometimes we don't know how long one of the sides is, so we put an X. We know that angle is 30 degrees. Similar setup here, we don't know how long that side is. And then some you'll notice we do know how long these two sides are, but we don't know what that angle there is. So in normal algebra, or in anything, if you don't know how long what a number is, you put an X there. If you don't know what the degrees are or what the angle is, we use that symbol there. It's called theta. But it's just a different way of saying X when you don't know what the angle is, okay? So this just means we don't know what the angle is. This means we don't know how long that side is. Pause it and draw those 6 triangles, please. Okay, when we are labeling triangles, there are 3 letters. Of course, 3 letters because there are 3 different sides that we need to label. The 3 letters that we'll be using are O, A, and H. Now, have a look at this here on the screen. O stands for opposite, A stands for adjacent, and H stands for hypotenuse. We need to know which side is which so we know where to put the H, the A, and the O. So the instructions on the screen tell you now that H is probably the easiest one to start with. Easy to do that one first, hypotenuse. We already know what that is. That's the diagonal side, or the one that's opposite the right angle. O is the side that is opposite the angle we've been given, and A, adjacent, well, that's just the other side that we haven't named yet. But let's have a look at our triangles again now. I'm going to do the first one, then you're going to pause it and try and do all the others. So the information that you've just written down, or that you've seen on the previous screen, told you that H is the hypotenuse, and it told you that that's the diagonal side. So I can put an H next to this one here. Look again, here's the green. Remember, green is going to be our labeling color. I'm always going to do my labeling in green. Then the information from before, if you didn't, go back and write that information down, please. O says opposite. Now, opposite what? Opposite the degrees, opposite the angle. So you need to have a look, what side, it's either going to be this side or this side, is the 30 looking at? So what side is opposite that 30? What is it looking at? Well, it's looking at this side here. It is opposite this side here. So the O goes on that side there. So I've labelled that side with an H, I've labelled that side with an O. That must mean that this one here is the A for adjacent. Adjacent is a fancy word for next to. And it is adjacent or next to the 30 degrees. That's what it means. It's next to that angle that you've got. I'd like you to now pause, try and do all of them. I'm going to come back and show you these 2 next. Okay. Let's do these 2 and see if we're on the right track. Start with the H for hypotenuse. It's the diagonal side, so it's got to be that one there. Put an H. Now, that 28, find out what side it's looking at and put an O there. Well, the 28 is looking at that side there, so an O goes there. The leftover one means A must be that one there because it's next to or adjacent to 28. Over here, just because it's that little symbol, doesn't change anything. Start with the hypotenuse, that's the one looking at here, the diagonal. Then, there's no number this time, but we still treat this little theta as if it were like the 28 or the 30 here. What side is it looking at? It is looking at the 13 over here. So that's the opposite, which means that must be the adjacent. So see if you got those 2 right, and if you haven't already, pause it and do the next ones. Okay, let's really quickly label the bottom ones now. looking at that one there, hypotenuse. The 41 is looking at the x, so that's the O, which means that must be the A. Find the diagonal side, that's the H for hypotenuse. The theta is looking at the bottom down there, so the O goes there, which means that must be the A. Diagonal side, hypotenuse. The theta is looking at the 7, so the O goes there, and the A goes up the top. That's what your labelled sides should look like. Okay, now I want you to do some circling. We need to circle. See how these two little friends here, these two buddies, they go together. So I'm going to circle them. Don't circle this side because it doesn't have a buddy, it's all by itself. But see, there's two bits of information, there's two buddies here, so I'm going to circle those two. I want you to do the same for all the others, please. Pause it and circle all of the groups. If it's by itself, don't circle it. Go. See if you've circled all the same as mine. Everything that had two bits of information or anything that were two little buddies, we circled them together. Anything that was just the green letter by itself, didn't circle it. Okay. Now I'd like you to have a look at this really important phrase. You might remember it from last year. I'll put it up on the screen now. SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. First thing you'll notice is there's O's, A's and H's in that phrase, SOHCAHTOA. The O's stand for opposite, just like what we've been labelling. The A's stand for adjacent and the H's stand for hypotenuse. Write this down in your book. Then there are three other letters at the start of each one, S, C and T. Now they are those three trigonometry buttons on your calculator that we're going to be using throughout this whole chapter. S stands for sine, C stands for cos, and T stands for tan. That little combination, SOH, will tell us how to work with our triangles. CAH will tell us how to work with different triangles, and same for tan. So, let's have a look back at the screen, at the board. Here, I've circled O and H. Now look back at what you just wrote down. What combination has the letters O and H? SOH does. What does S stand for? Sine. So the first thing I want you to write down next to this triangle is sine, because I've circled O and H. Next to the word sine, you always write the angle. So you're going to start by writing sine, cos or tan. Next you'll write the angle, 30 degrees. Then you'll put an equals. And next to it you're going to do a fraction. Okay, so next to that you're going to put a fraction. And this is where the O and the H part come in handy. So because it said SOH, S-O-H, S-O-H. But instead of putting the green O and the H here, put the numbers that are in its circle there instead. So instead of putting an O at the top, what's in the O circle? That's an X. Instead of putting an H on the bottom, what's in the H circle? It's 18. Okay? So that is what you need to do for every single triangle. Pause it, have a go at the next two, and then we'll come back and correct. Okay, for the next one, I've circled A and H. So have a look at your SOHCAHTOA again. A and H. Well, that's in the middle with the C. So I'm going to write down cos. Next to the word cos, what do you always have to write? The degrees, the angle. So you're going to write cos 28 degrees. Put an equals sign, and now you have to do a fraction. Your fraction, CAH, C-A-H. But instead of writing A, I'm going to write what number is in its circle, 11. Instead of writing H, I'm going to write what number, in this case it's a letter, in its circle. It'll be an X. Next one, you've circled O and A, SOHCAHTOA, OA, tan. Next to the word tan, write down the angle. This time there's no number. So next to the word tan, what should you write instead? Put that symbol, theta. Okay? Put an equals sign. Now do your fraction. TOA says OA. That is O goes on top. Look at the circle, there's a 13 in there. A goes on the bottom, there's a 10. Pause it and do the other three. Go. Okay, it's a little bit messy, but you can see where the answers are in black. Please check all of yours and see if you got the same answers as mine. If you did, that is all you need to know about labeling triangles. You can now move on to the questions.